Hello everyone, I'm Jeff Stanley with Standley Handcrafted, and today we're going to be talking about wax and weighing it and basically getting it into jars. A question that comes up a lot, and it's one that popped up again that Sean and I were talking about the other day, and that is when you're filling the candles. In a lot of the tutorials that I do, I use the 8-ounce jelly jar, which is a really common jar. And then of course, pretty much any of the waxes, we're using kind of 1 pound as the base for everything. For the oils, just the mixing, the weighing, and pouring into different jars. And the question that comes up a lot is, the 1 pound of wax fits into 3 of the 8-ounce jelly jars, which is this one right here. And of course, everybody's first question is, how does 16 ounces fit into 3 8-ounce jars? That would be 24 ounces. And that's what this video is gonna be right here. We're gonna go into exactly why 16 ounces of wax is gonna fill 3 of these jars. Now, first off, you're gonna see that the jar isn't actually full all the way. So 8 ounces would be clear to the top. So if you did have 3 jars full completely to the top, you're looking at right around like 24 ounces. So we're actually going down just a little bit more. So you're only putting, I don't know, I'd probably say like 85–90% of the jars being full. So you're gonna knock that down just a little bit more, but that still doesn't take into the fact that you're only adding 16 ounces of wax. But a lot of people forget that you're also adding a little bit of oil, which kind of bumps that up a little bit. So you're gonna be using 16 ounces of wax, and then with the parasoy, you're gonna be using right around 1.2 to 1.3 ounces of oil, which is gonna bump that up to about 17.2, 17.3. But again, that still doesn't add up to around kind of 20, 21, 22 ounces to fill those 3 jars. And that's when we get into another area that a lot of people don't think about, and something else that I kind of wanted to talk about too, and that's because the wax actually has more volume than say something like water. So a lot of people, when they get into candles, they don't know how much wax to add to a particular jar. So a lot of people recommend adding water to a jar and basically seeing how much you need. So basically, a lot of people will get in and they'll fill this jar to right about this point. They'll see the exact ounces that they need for water. They'll take into a little bit of consideration for the oil that's going to go into it, maybe knock it down a little bit. And then of course, when you weigh out that much wax and then you pour it into these, you end up with a lot more wax than you thought of. You end up with a lot more wax than you actually calculated for. And that's because wax is larger by volume than water is. And what I mean by that is 16 ounces of water, if you measure that into a measuring cup, it's going to hit the 16 ounce mark. If you measure 16 ounces of weighed wax and then you melt it down and then you pour that into the same measuring cup, you're actually going to get a lot more than the 16 ounce line with the water. So we're gonna go ahead and just jump right into the video. I've already melted some, and I'm just gonna show you the video of basically doing the water, weighing it out, showing it in the measuring cup, and then weighing the wax, melting it, and then pouring it back into the measuring cup. All right, so we've got 16 ounces of wax, solid form. We're gonna go ahead and melt that down to see what it looks like in liquid form once you pour it into this, to see the difference between 16 weighed ounces and 16 volume ounces. And while we're waiting for that, I've got some water right here. So we're gonna go ahead and weigh out 16 ounces. Alright, so that's around 16.4, so just a little bit over, but you can see that it's right at the 16 ounce mark. It's actually just under a little bit, if I would have poured exactly 16 ounces. And then we're gonna go ahead and do the same thing with the wax. Alright, so this is fully melted, and this is 16 ounces exactly from what we measured earlier. Go ahead and zero this out, and then we're just going to go ahead and pour this in. And you can see exactly what I was going for. 15.8. There's still a little bit of wax in there. We'll try to get it back up to 16. That's good enough, but the point is that is why you measure by weight, not volume. So you can see the water, of course, it was 16.4, and it was right at the 16 mark. The wax at 15.9 is almost at 20 fluid ounces. So that's the big reason why you always, so that right there is exactly why you're always gonna measure and test in your glasses. Okay, so you can clearly see that the wax, there is a lot more wax than there is water, and that's where a lot of people get into trouble. They do a lot of these jars, they'll fill them up, and when they go to do like 6 jars or something like that, if you're weighing out like 2 pounds, you end up with almost another full jar with wax that's left over that you didn't calculate for. So that's why measuring with water is not a great idea. It's always best to start with 1 pound of wax, melt it down, and then just pour it into jars. And if you're under or over, you can adjust for that. You can add an extra jar, add a little bit more wax. If you do have a little bit of extra wax, I usually just pour it into a melt. Like these right here, if I have extra wax, especially when I'm doing the first couple batches and I'm trying to measure out how much wax is gonna go into like 2 or 3 of the 9-ounce straight jars, the tumblers or anything like that, I know to start with 1 pound, and I'll see how many jars I get out of that, and anything left over, I just pour straight into melts and then turn around and sell these. But that still leaves the other question that a lot of people have, and that is, how does 16 ounces of wax, and of course, bumping it up with the oil and everything like that, 17.3 ounces of total wax weight and oil weight fit into 3 jars? And basically that's gonna come down to this. So you're looking at a total of around 17.2, 17.3. If you divide that by 3 jars, which it fits into, you're gonna come out to just under 6 ounces. So you're actually putting about 6 ounces of wax and oil into each jar. So you're not actually getting a full 8 ounces in the 8-ounce jelly jar. And then of course the reason that looks so full is because, again, you saw in the video that the wax, there's a lot more volume than there is the water by weight. So you saw that there's 20 ounces of basically volume. So if you're gonna go by volume of wax, it went up to the 20-ounce line. So getting that much more wax, it's gonna, even though it weighs less, you're gonna fill more of the jar. So if you were to fill 6 ounces of water in this thing, it would be a lot less than this. So that's where a lot of people get into trouble with this one. And I definitely did it in the beginning. I just didn't even think about wax and water weighing the same or having the same volume. And I made the same mistake. I would basically go through, I measured a couple jars, and then of course I ended up with so much extra wax that I just couldn't figure it out. And then of course, like thinking about it a little bit, actually going back to like high school science, it finally made sense on why it did that. So like I said, getting into new jars and anything like that, and how do you weigh them out? How do you figure out the wax? I just go for 1 pound. You can get away with a few other ways to do it too. If you have like a 12-ounce jar, you know it's not gonna hold 12 ounces. So I usually go back down to right around like 80% wax. So if it's a 12-ounce jar, I'll take it down to 9, 10 ounces, somewhere in there, and then I'll weigh that out, add the oil, and then I'll fill a couple different jars. Basically take like a 12-ounce tumbler, 10 ounces of wax, and then I'll kind of double that up so I can kind of match it. So if I'm doing 3 jars, it'd be 30 ounces. So that's like right at 2 pounds basically. So I would just go ahead and add 2 ounces of wax, fill those up, kind of see where they go and see how much wax I have left over or see how much wax I need. And then I can adjust that 32 ounces up or down like 1 or 2, maybe 3 ounces depending on what I'm doing. So if those 12-ounce tumblers ended up only taking about 9 ounces of wax, I would take that back down from the 32, knock it back to around like 28, 29 ounces, or bump it up to maybe 33 or 34. And the reason you would probably take it down a little bit more, the 10 ounces, I think the 12-ounce tumblers, it's been a while since I filled those, I think they actually take a little bit closer to 9 ounces of wax. And then of course, when you add the oil, that's gonna bump it up a little bit more to around the 10-ounce mark. But that would basically be my recommendation. I usually just start out with 1 pound, pour it, see what it does, and then if you've got extra, you're gonna have a couple extra melts, or just go by about 80% of the actual jar itself. So again, like I said, a 12-ounce, I would knock it down to around 9 or 10. If you're filling like a 20-ounce jar or a bigger candle, I would knock that one down probably 16 to 17. I don't know if I would go 18 on that one just because you're gonna have so much more wax that's probably gonna fill it. So I would knock that one down a little bit more. So probably 16 ounces in a 20-ounce container, and then of course adjust as needed. So I hope that made sense to a lot of people. We get this question a lot, and I am surprised I haven't done a video about this one in all this time. It's a real easy one. It's an easy one to mess up, and it's one that a lot of beginners mess up every single time. I did it in the beginning, and somebody new watching this video is probably still gonna do it. So again, if you have any questions on this one, or if you have something to add to this one that I might have forgotten or kind of skipped over, just let me know in the comments down below. I try to go through and answer every single one of them. And then of course, this discussion will be further carried on the DIY Facebook group, and I've got a link for that down below as well. And of course, a lot of the materials that I use in the video, I've also got links to like Candle Science, Lone Star, Maple Street, everything like that in the links down below. So if you see something in the video that you kind of want to use, like the bag clips, a lot of people like the bag clips or the wick holders that I use, and I always keep a link for those down below because they're so handy. And then of course you can follow me on all the social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, my website, my email is down below also, so please reach out, ask me anything you need to, the DIY Facebook group. You can reach out to me on anything and I'll try to get back to you as much as possible. And of course, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, and thank you for watching.